Next two guests really don't need an introduction, but they deserve one. There's no question about that. We are so lucky in Toronto that we have one of the best, if not the best, general manager in the history of the CFL. Only Wally Buono has more wins. Nobody's been to more Grey Cups as a general manager. He's got 5 wins as a Grey Cup wins as a GM. 11 times he's been to the dance. And, you know, despite what you may have seen on Twitter, he was really busy after free agency started. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Jim Popp. There we go. Either one. And guess who's back? As the defensive coordinator with the 2017 team, they did all right. Toronto Argonauts led the CFL in sacks. And it was his disposition and his aggressive nature on defense that helped lead the Argos not only to the Grey Cup championship, but 2 of the most memorable turnovers in franchise history, Cassius Vaughn and Matt Black. He's back. After a year in the NCAA with the University of Arkansas, he is back to Toronto, the 44th head coach in Argonaut history, defensive coordinator as well this year. Please give it up for Mr. Corey Chamblin.
That's you, brother.
Awesome. I like it.
I love reunions.
Come on, Jim.
I love reunions. You two guys are back together now. How did it, I'll start with Corey. How did it happen from your perspective? How are you back here in Toronto?
You know what? I mean, it was a deal to where I was in the NCAA, getting some experience in different things. And I remember Jim reached out and we kind of talked. And even though the process wasn't going as well, the season down there, you know, I told Jim, hey, let me finish this a little bit. But I'm definitely interested. You know, being a coordinator is one thing, but being the head coach, especially of the Argos, is something totally different. You know, it's one of the most storied franchises in this league. So, you know, I was excited when Jim called, and I'm excited to be here now. And we hope that we can take this excitement from today all the way to the end in the Grey Cup.
Jim, you got your man. There was a coaching vacancy here in December, and you got the guy that you were looking at all along. How did you and Corey get together and you close this deal?
Well, I tell you, you know, as soon as we knew a coaching change was happening, I reached out to Corey. I told him he was my #1 choice, and I would think the franchise would agree with that once we sat down and met. As he said, he needed a little time. He needed to finish what he started. Where he was in the NCAA. We actually had the time just because of our rules to the CFL in order to wait till after the Grey Cup. And but we talked all through that stage because we could, you know. And but I think we have great admiration for one another, great respect being in this league together. What he has done as a head coach, defensive coordinator, his background, he's built it up quick. He's very well respected. As I said, working with him in 2017, I'll say it again in here, Don Matthews is the other guy. The people I've worked with in the CFL, Corey is one of 2 people who gets the most out of the players we have, the talent. He formulates everything to get the best out of them. And I watched that happen in 2017, week after week after week. The first week we ever were together, heading into the season or right after camp, I said, look, if you don't have something, let me know. He goes, I trust you, I respect you, whatever you give me, I'll make it work. And he did, he showed that. So that's exactly why I went back to Corey. And listen, we've had many talks, we respect one another, and we both expect great things for our city and the Toronto Argonauts.
You're here. So you were here last in 2017, and I'd say there's been a pretty big change in the personnel, but there's been a pretty big change in personnel since 11:59 a.m. on February 12th. It's a different look team. What has you most excited about this group of athletes that you're about to start coaching, not only as a head coach, but as a coordinator?
You know, I think it's a great mix of guys. You know, we're bringing in some new guys in terms of free agency, you know, who fit the bill. But when you look at it, there's some guys that understand that aggressive nature. You know, it's not just about blitzing. It's not just about throwing the ball downfield, but it's about having a goal and aggressively going after it, you know, and sticking to that on a day-to-day basis. You know, we're definitely athletic. And like Jim said, when you look on paper, we have enough on paper to contend. We have enough depth also to where if we have those lulls in between in terms of injuries that we can keep this thing rolling. But I'm excited that, one, the players that are on the roster, they want to be here. They understand that it was a blip last year and that this team is built to win it again and get to there and do the things that we need to do. So Jim did an excellent job of sitting down, laying a plan for us with the scouts, personnel, and all those things, saying, hey, this is how we're going to upgrade this team. You know, it wasn't just one area. It was many areas. Not that it was far off, but I think it's doing some things to put us over the top to make sure that we're right there near the top in every category doing what we need to do. Beautiful.
Jim, you were pretty busy, as was Corey and the scouting staff on free agency day. You guys were nice enough to grant me access, and I wrote about it for Argonauts.ca. That was my first experience being in there. Thank you. On free agency day, I was absolutely floored by the process. The fact that you got the guys that you did, the way that it started, because obviously everybody knows about, you know, you were going after Bo. Are you very surprised that you were able to get the haul that you did? Because you look back at the guys you brought in, it's a hell of a catch.
Yeah, I tell you, I tell you, we had a great day, a great 2-3 days, and yeah. So, look, when you're building a team, I can tell you, when we came here in 2017, there was a lot that had to be changed that we couldn't change overnight. We did it slowly. We did it little by little. We started out by drafting, having to build up our Canadian depth that wasn't here already. There's times when there's times that players, as you go along, you're formulating schemes. You know, when we lost this gentleman next to us and Marcus Brady, some things changed in our locker room. Our schematics changed because of different coaches. But as you go through this whole process, you got to, from day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, you got to try to identify what you can do to make your team better. So on that draft, on the free agency day, when it hit 12 noon, we put 5 names on the board. No disrespect to any quarterback we have, but, you know, when you look in the league and you go, who's heralded as the best 2 players, is Bo Levi Mitchell, Mike Riley at that pivot position. We said we're going to try to go after these guys. We knew Mike Riley we knew where he was going. Everybody knew that 2 months ago. The agent that controlled a lot of these people, Trevor Harris, Bo Levi Mitchell, said that Bo Levi Mitchell was the guy you had the best chance at. Whether we did or didn't, we gave it all. We set some new standards in modern history here about what we were going to pay that quarterback and try to lure him here. It didn't happen. During that lull, as Mike witnessed, we had to wait hours to get an answer. We could not make moves on other players. And really, the only players that we didn't really have a chance at were some of the guys paid at the highest at their position, not necessarily that they're that much better than the next tier of guys that might got paid pretty high but not as high. And some of those guys went off the board. And the truth is, we really had room for one of those type of guys. We got the guy we wanted, Darrell Walker, okay? So out of those 5 guys, Riley's off the board, Mitchell's off the board. We're sitting here with Darrell. We had to wait. I mean, this gentleman had 3 flights canceled that day. It was terrible weather. He was back and forth to Houston, went back home. We didn't even know if he was going to get on a flight. He finally got here at 2 in the morning. Next day, we did everything to try to get him to sign that day. He needed to go back home. It all worked out. But one of those other 2 names was Chris Rainey. And we really felt that it was very explosive and can change the game in a blink of an eye. And I was fortunate to bring Chris into the league, and we had that relationship. And a guy like James down here did a tremendous job of recruiting. And I want to point out Troy Davis is here, one of our, make sure you see Troy tonight. He's just tremendous in helping. And yes, stand up, Troy.
Stand up.
Because he's not.
Right there, Troy Davis.
I mean, Troy's another player that has this unbelievable desire and heart to be great, and he lets it loose every day on game day. I also want to point out, before I forget, is Vince Magri. Vince, stand up. You know, Vince here, we've had a tremendous work.
Give him a hand.
You know, as great a drafts as we've had some great drafts the last 2 years. People may not realize it, but Vince is the one who does all the background work, background checks, visits every youth sports school, lays out everything. We start out with about 900 players, gets it narrowed down to 80. We're all watching film, but he's the mastermind behind here of getting that set up for us. I've got to make some decisions and calls when it comes game day, but he's another reason for our success. So I just want to point him out.
Absolutely.
Well, I also want to let you know that James Wilder has 3 titles: recruiting coordinator, running back, and Instagram extraordinaire. So.
But can he pull off that hat? Yes or no?
And fashion extraordinaire.
Okay. Okay, I had to write these down because there were so many. I want you to maybe give a sentence or 2 or 3 or 5 about all of the new acquisitions from free agency. Coach, if you can do the defensive side, Jim, if you can do the offensive side, that kind of works out almost perfectly. You talk a little bit about him. What does Darrell Walker bring to this team?
Big play, big play instantly. Now, what you've seen the last couple years, it was the type of offense we ran. Nothing wrong. Believe me, I've won several championships with that offense, but it's not, you know, it's an offense that is short range, short passes, methodical moving. When you have a pinpoint passer like Ricky Ray or Anthony Cavalier, operates great, okay? You lose somebody like that, and it's a very difficult system to learn, guys that have played in it. So the concept wasn't to push the ball downfield. We have speed. We have it on the team before Darrell. Believe me, guys like S.J. Green is doing flips, Amani Edwards. You know, this gentleman down here, Wilder, running the ball, he knows everybody's not going to get in the box. Darrell Walker is an instant threat to go deep like that and change the game. Yep.
Absolutely. A lot of fans happy to see this man come back. Sean Lemon is an Argo once again.
Oh, my God. Please don't tweet that out. Please don't let him know that you're showing him that much love, because he's going to be so pissed that he's not here. I bet you a tweet comes out in the next 5 minutes. Let me know about Sean. You know what, Sean, you know, I'm excited to have Sean back. You know, Sean's a guy whose game, you know, we had him in 2017, you know, and then, you know, he was injured for that season. And then I think Sean was traded away, but his growth process.
I'll tell you. I'll be happy to tell you. Go ahead.
Well, it was all Jim, but, you know, so I wasn't here, so put it on Jim. You know, hey, I'll tell you what, to be honest with you, and you asked that was probably one of the best things that ever happened for Sean Lemon, because he's a better young man and a better football player, and he's more focused, and he's not going to just settle for average. You know, I joke with Sean all the time. You know, he talks about the 11 sacks that he has last year, and I said, that's average. Are you excited about that? Where's the 19 to 20 sacks? So if he's settling for that and happy with that, I can guarantee you this new Sean Lemon that he's not settling for that he knows that he has more in the tank, and that he hasn't even reached his peak yet. And I'm going to hold him to that I'm excited to have Sean, and I guarantee you that he's going to have his best year yet.
There you go. He was number 4 on your wish list, Chris Rainey.
Chris Rainey, yep. Well, Chris Rainey is instant field position, so what he can give you is explosive. He's, in my book, by far the most dangerous returner in the league. He can change the game in a blink of an eye. He can change directions very quickly. You know, Chris is another guy that fell into a scenario in Montreal where he couldn't get on the field a whole lot, much like a Chad Owens that became a star here. So he went on to BC and really electrified. So he wanted to be here in Toronto. It was a great for us. He wanted to come to the big city. He wanted to reunite. He's got some friends here, but one of the biggest friends to the offense and the defense is a change of field position. He gives us that chance.
When you were in Montreal, if there was a really good 5'4" returner, you were going to find him and bring him in because you brought like 10 guys
Always
like
looking
that.
for him.
Every year there was another new one. Speaking of good returners, Kevin Fogg is here, who was number 2 in punt returns in the league last year. You get him as a defensive back as well.
Yeah, you know, it's awesome. And just to tie those two in together a little bit, when you talk about Kevin and you talk about Chris, what we talked about is, and Jim alluded to it earlier when he said that we believed in the quarterbacks that we had on the roster, you know, talking about James being, Franklin being one of the hottest commodities a couple of years before. You know, Bo Levi Mitchell and those guys, they've established themselves as some of the top quarterbacks in this league. And our thought process is if we can have instant field position in terms of with Fogg, in terms with Rainey and all those guys, is allow the quarterback to grow into that elite quarterback. You know, he's had some elite quarters, as you talked about. We haven't had those elite games yet, but that's what we're looking for from that position. And adding a guy like Fogg, you know, on that side of the ball. So now we have instant field position if we need be in terms of the return aspect, but also in terms of defense. We got to make sure that we find a way to get the ball, okay? And he's that type of guy that he's not afraid to go find a way to get the ball, whether we're moving in the safety, corner, or whatever it may be. We got to find ways for the guys that can catch the ball, put them on defense, and do it. I mean, we paid Darrell Walker enough. He might be a free safety. Come on.
Okay, I'm going to set you up, so remember me fondly for this one. What's the weather forecast like for BMO Field for the home opener, Coach?
Well, for the other team, it's going to be rainy with a chance of fall. And not only that, if you come to that game, we promise you we'll get wild and sometimes even wilder.
We'll get to Mr. Wild in a couple of seconds. Another guy you brought into Montreal, Tyrell Sutton.
Yeah, I tell you, why? You never have enough depth. Let me tell you what, when you think you have enough depth at one position, somehow it doesn't always turn out that way. So when...
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Finish your beer. We'll get there.
So, Darrell has tremendous vision. He is a pounder. He's much like James. You got to have somebody else. This gentleman down here, stand up. This guy right here, I mean, he's in phenomenal shape right now. But this guy, for the past 2 years, is played hurt, banged up. Wouldn't believe how many shots he's taken to play game in and game out. Refused to come out of the game, refused not to be. We don't need to, if we don't have to do that and we got plenty of people, then we need to find some way to rest so we always have him at his best, even if he needs a day or two off. Okay? So I want to have James Wilder have 5 Grey Cup rings on his fingers, so that's what I want.
I do have one question. Who asked that question? Did James tell you to ask that question?
Okay. He's not a big name, but I saw your face light up when you were watching highlights of Toby Antigua.
Oh, man, I'll tell you what. You know, you guys don't know him. It may be a couple of claps, but he's going to make Jim Popp's world live in hell after playing in that defense. I mean, because I'm just telling you, that kid has so much ability, or that guy has so much ability, you know, and just looking at him and some of the things that he can do, you know, I'm excited about him. You know, he's played he's played linebacker, he's even played safety, and he's a converted wide receiver, so he understands protection and all that stuff. But, you know, I was able to look at him the other night for a couple of hours as I was looking at it and telling the D-line coach to look at it. I think he could be very special, and he can help us in a lot of different ways to get to that quarterback.
240-pound safety, that'd be cool. Mercer Timmis.
Oh, yeah. You know, Timmis, this guy's got size and speed. This is another guy that mimics James Wilder. So when you look at the Canadian ratio, when we have to play a certain amount of Canadians, nationals versus international players, we may not be able to carry from one week to another 2 U.S. or American running backs. You know, the best players are going to play. It doesn't matter what their nationality is. But it gives us the option to be able to play and have a legitimate Canadian running back to be able to enter in and out of the game. That is a true tailback. And, you know, if James for some reason is not in there, he needs a break, then you're going to have Declan and Timmis in there pounding it. Yeah.
Okay, I want you all to say this name together so you get used to it. Micah Alway. Coach?
Well, it looks like, huh? Alway? Okay, Alway. I'll tell you what, man, you're talking about it. Jim, and, I've been gone from the league from a year, and Jim brought his name up, and when we watched him on film, I mean, and Vinny did, I mean, it was exciting. He looks like what a linebacker is supposed to look like. He's fitting on the other side of the ball. He's powering up O-lineman. He's shedding, and he has a little bit of nastiness to him, okay? And I'm okay with that 1960, 70 player that wants, to do all that, spit on somebody. Don't do it. But, but we want to be nasty, and we want to be aggressive, and he's the type of player that we're going to have to pull back. I mean, you got to be aggressive on defense, and I think a guy like that is definitely going to set the tone game in, game out, and we were excited. And, the other things, he was excited to be here. And you just want those type of guys. If you look at any championship team in all the leagues and you look at their defense, it starts with their linebacker core, So that's where it is, and we have some nasty guys at that position. I'm excited about it.
I'm sorry, you had a question? Oh, Brandon Bridge. Okay. Brandon Bridge, Jim.
Because I like him.
There you go.
I mean, honestly, this is a guy, again, that I drafted in Montreal. I believed in him, even though the Canadian quarterback does not count Canadian. That has not been changed. I hope it does. It's also a foresight that hopefully in this new collective agreement that they make the Canadian quarterback a Canadian. So now Brandon Bridge is as big a competitor you're ever going to be around. He went to the U.S. and played. I watched him in person several times. I believed in him that he could come in here and compete to be a starting quarterback in the CFL. He's gone through a lot of growing, right at stages. I think that he had a great talk with Corey the other day. He knows he has to come in here and compete to win a job. But I think that to help a young man's dream come true, have a local product, get to play for the Argonauts and compete for a job, I think he was well deserving of it, and I'm glad he chose to want to come here, and we'll give him every chance we can.
You have 2 Canadian quarterbacks now with Noah Picton. That's awesome.
Yeah, we do.
That's awesome.
And Noah, even though he's not a really big guy, and we know what really big guys have done in this city at quarterback, don't we? But I tell you, Noah is probably one of the sharpest young men that you'll ever be around in this game. He'll probably, if he's not playing, he'll probably get into coaching and have a tremendous career. So he did so well last year. He was pegged to play at the game at Guelph and didn't get in the rotation for some reason, and I felt really bad about it. And I told him when he left that day, I said, you'll be back here next year. And so I'll keep my promise, and we'll get him back out there.
All-time leading passer in university history in this country. That's Wilder. You have Wild. Ian Wild has joined us from Winnipeg.
Yeah, we have good old Ian Wild. Like I said, that compliment there. I mean, he's another guy. We watched him on film. He could do multiple things. I heard somebody say special teams. The first thing is he's a backup snapper, so that gives us a lot of depth, and people don't think about that, but it gives us depth in some of the things that he can do there. He's also a teamer in terms of just playing the teams, but he's also a starting linebacker to where he can play in the box, he can play outside of the box, and he's another guy that could play deep sometimes. So, and very athletic. He's another player that I look forward to coaching. He's played in that Winnipeg scheme, and there's some familiarity there from their scheme to our scheme with Richie Hall, but I'm excited to have Ian Wild in this thing, and like I said, hopefully he plays like his last name. Wow.
Beautiful. Yesterday, Jim, you stole a starting offensive tackle from Calgary. You started at left tackle against the Argos in 2017 in the Grey Cup. Last year, you started at right tackle on the offensive line. Randy Richards is now an Argo. What does that bring?
Versatility. Listen, in any football league, you don't have enough offensive tackles. There's not enough offensive linemen to go around. When you have an athletic, versatile player, and we have his O-line coach from the last few years, which gives us some insight, and Dan DeRozzi, who's the best in the CFL, and Corey has a great relationship with Dan, was able to lure him here to coach with us. It gives us, a gentleman that already knows the system, but it gives us tremendous depth. He will compete for a starting job. And we're going to have some really hard decisions because right now we have 4 legit starting offensive tackles, which I don't know if there's many teams in the league that have more than 2, and let alone some up-and-coming young Canadians that have been on the path of developing into having a chance to start. So Our key is to, and I've always been this way, is to build a tremendously strong offensive line that helps protect the quarterback. Schemes have a lot to do with it. Play calling, setting up where your quarterback is and where the passing points are, launch points. But at the end of the day, you can never have enough great offensive linemen, and he just adds to our depth.
Final one. It's an unusual event when you're watching late night US TV and the talk show hosts come on and the comedians, and you see the Toronto Argonaut logo appear out of nowhere. I'm watching Stephen Colbert last night, or when this happens, and he starts talking about a man named Popp.
Popp Johnson.
Popp Johnson.
That's it. When he comes out, make sure you give it to him. But I tell you what, Popp doesn't play like Popp. I can tell you that right now. He might poop on a lot of people on the other side, but I'll tell you, that guy there in 2017, was it? I mean, he was having a phenomenal year. I can remember turning this kid on and watching him on film, and I was like, who is this? I mean, he can disrupt it. I watched him again the other night, just looking at him, and I'm excited about it. You know, he gives us, you have Cleon Lang and those guys on the inside, but I think he gives us another presence on the inside. You know, defense, it starts up front. Like I said, those linebackers finish it, but it starts up front with a ferocious defensive line, and it's going to give some guards and centers and hell in this league to have those guys on the inside. But Popp is, you know, he's a guy that I still don't think he's reached his potential, but I'm definitely excited to have him.
Still got to give him number 2 as a uniform. Just saying. Just saying. This is a hell of a crowd tonight. This is outstanding. These are your people. What do you have to say to them about this season coming up? I'll let each of you grab the mic here for one last thing before we bring out the commish.
I like Grey Cup a little bit better. You know, Ricky, you know, I spoke to Ricky just to answer that. You know, I've spoken to Ricky. I need to speak to him again, so I'm glad you said that. You know, Ricky's probably going to transition. He understands where he is. He's getting healthy, but, you know, like anything else, you know, he understands that this is a football league and this is a business. And, you know, as I spoke about earlier about Sean being traded, it's not about the past, it's about the present and us moving forward and really honoring those guys from the past. And he did a hell of a thing for us as long as he was here, but it's time to move forward with these other guys. And
well put.
And the other thing is, get excited and stay excited for this year. I can guarantee you right now, and I put a strong guarantee on that the coaching staff's working hard, that I'm definitely on their butt night and day to say we got to put a winning product on that field. And you can tell, and you can look at the work that Jim and his crew has done. I mean, we're not sitting pat. We're figuring out a way to put a product on that field so when you guys fill those stands, that you have something that you can be proud of game in and game out.
Beautiful.
There's a fine line between winning and losing in pro sports, and it is finding the opportunity to get over the above average than the below average. Now, last year we lost a lot of close games. We started a lot of games out behind. We played catch-up football. We were not built and designed to play catch-up football. So we had to go out, we had to tweak, we had to make changes. We can't control injuries. It does not take much. You learned that in 2017, how to get it turned and to win a championship. We feel right now on paper, as Corey said, we got every chance as anybody in this league to win a championship. We may have young quarterbacks that not everybody sees as maybe that guy yet, but I'm going to tell you, before we got to where we were last year, everybody believed it, thought it was there. I think the talent is all there. We got to draw it out of them. They've got to raise their play, and we got to bring it. And if we do, we'll be right there where you want to see us, hopefully on a snowy day, cold, and a championship ring. That's what we want.
Beautiful. I'm going to let this go. I like this. Beautiful.
Awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, they're going to come back here later for a question and answer period where you can get some of those questions in. One more time, Corey Chamblin and Jim Popp, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.